I discovered a haunted movie theater with a cursed history. And the SCRMS won't stop. I never should have opened that door. I stood there, hand trembling on the cold brass knob, feeling a chill creep down my spine. The old theater loomed before me, its once vibrant marquee now a jagged smile of decay. I had heard the stories, the whispers of lost souls trapped inside, replaying their final moments in endless loops. But curiosity overpowered my dread. I pushed the door open, and it creaked like a warning. Inside, the darkness swallowed me. Stale popcorn air mixed with dampness, clinging to my throat. The dusty air-bitten light from the flickering projector cast ghastly shadows on the wall, dancing like lost spirits. My heartbeat quickened, echoing against the silent rows of empty seats. This place had a pulse. Whispers slithered around me, faint and disembodied. I couldn't make out the words, but a shiver ran through me. I shuffled further in, every step felt heavier, as if the floor was pulling me down. I spotted an old film reel, the title faded and Peeling All That Remains. I picked it up, and a sudden clang echoed behind me. I spun around, breath catching in my throat. Nothing. Just the shadows. The air grew colder. I could feel it, pressing against my skin, like icy fingers. My skin prickled. Was I alone? Or was something watching me? A movie poster caught my Gazia figure, eyes wide with terror, screaming in silence. The face felt familiar. My heart raced. I turned to leave, but my feet felt glued to the floor, another noise this time, a moan. It seeped through the walls, resonating deep within me. I wanted to run, but I was rooted in fear. The screams of the past echoed in my mind, a mounting crescendo of despair. Get out. It seemed to whisper, but my body wouldn't obey. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence was suffocating. I searched the darkness, pushing back against the rising panic. What was that? A movement? The figure darted into the light, a flash of pale skin, hollow eyes staring right at me, filled with agony and remorse. I froze. My throat tightened and I felt the weight of 1,000 stories pressing on me, each one a scream frozen in time. As the figure advanced, shadows clawed at my skirt, trying to pull me back into their world. I forced a scream out, a desperate call for help. And then, the world exploded in darkness. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The suffocating darkness swallowed me whole, but as I gasped for breath, I felt a pull, a tugging sensation that coiled around my heart. The world spun violently, and the wails seeped in once more, a chaotic orchestra of anguish echoing through the depths of the theater. I blinked, fighting to clear the fog, and felt the cool concrete beneath me, but the air had grown thick and cloying. My lungs burned and I scrambled to my feet, feeling the icy breath of the void at my back. The projector flickered back to life with a sputter, illuminating the white screen with flickering, chaotic images. Faces swam across the surface, tormented expressions which morphed into ghastly shrieks, bloodied hands reaching desperately for escape. My stomach churned as the screams melded into a monstrous symphony and I staggered away from the blinding light. The shadows warped and twisted, now reacting to my presence. They pulsed like a living entity, slithering across the floor in an embrace that felt both alluring and terrifying. With each passing moment, they warped my sense of time and space. I realized then these weren't just flickers of light, they were pieces of the very souls trapped inside the theater. I could almost hear their thoughts, fleeting whispers, warnings layered with despair. Help us. Stay. Confusion turned to fear, and I lunged for the exit, but the way I came had vanished. Instead, I faced a labyrinth of shadowy aisles twisting into otherworldly configurations, leading deeper into the theater's heart. No. I didn't want to go deeper. With trembling hands, I pressed against one wall, cold and crumbling, researching for a way out. The whispers crescendoed around me, tugging at the edges of my sanity as they beckoned me closer to the screen. That a sharp clang erupted behind me, and I spun to see the figure again, its pale visage distorted, lips curled in a painful grimace. "Curse to watch," it mouthed silently, fingers clawing at the air as if it could reach deep within me. I staggered back, colliding with something warm and damp. I turned and my heart dropped. It was a woman, her eyes glazed, staring through me. Blood soaked her dress, pooling on the ground. She raised a hand slowly, a warning etched into her face, her lips forming a silent scream. I took a step back, shaking my head, my breath coming in short gasps. "Get out! Get out!" But the cries of the lost echoed within, drowning me in their need. I could feel their desperation curling around me, like ropes binding me to this cursed place. The lights flickered again, and the films of their torment played out vividly, betrayals and hauntings, replays of dread and despair. I couldn't look away, spellbound by horror, the woman's visage blending into the chaos. Was it her story I bore witness to? Her name whispered through time, something that crashed against my mind until I couldn't breathe. I became tethered to the past, watching, feeling every piercing wail, every drop of blood spilled onto the stage, meant for an audience long forgotten. Suddenly, the projector clicked, and the figures on the screen morphed. I felt the cold grip of something wrapping around my throat, squeezing tighter. I gasped, trying to break free. The woman seemed to convulse, caught in a moment of anguish as she screamed, but the sound drowned in the cacophony of the reel. I saw her face twist into that of a twisted horror. Then, an unearthly howl erupted, shattering every tangible piece of reality around me. A loud ripping of fate. The floor trembled, splintering beneath my feet as something enormous stirred within the darkness, shaking the very foundations of the theater. The walls trembled like the heartbeat of the damned, and I clutched my head, lost within a tempest of noise and terror. A door finally appeared, glowing faintly at the end of the hall. A whisper, an undeniable tug, "Let us out." The shadows coiled closer, urging me toward salvation, or was it another trap? My heart pounded as I bolted towards that flickering beacon, a chance to escape. That I reached for the door, but a hand grasped my wrist, cold, clammy, drawing me back. I turned to see the figures converging, faces twisted in torment beyond recognition. My breath hitched. They were all around me now, begging. I couldn't drown their pleas. "There's no escape." One shrieked. "You must join us." I screamed just as the world fractured, plunging into an infinite abyss until everything went dark. The agony faded, but then I felt it again, warmth dripping down my face. I opened my eyes to see the movie screen illuminating my surroundings. I was back in the theater, but it was different, darker, thicker, and reeking of despair. From the depths of the screen, a new film rolled. Its title appeared, glowing in grotesque letters, "The Final Showing." I felt the air around me shift again, and the crowd began to fill the empty seats, their hearts beating in synchrony with the raging pulse I felt within me. The whispers turned into a roaring tempest, shadows leaping toward me. Then a voice, eerily familiar, rang out in the chaos, echoing through the hall, as all eyes turned to me. "Will you scream with us?" As the laughter of the damned filled my ears, I realized this nightmare was far from over. I was not the audience, this was my debut. The shadows writhed around me, pulling tighter like nooses ready to snap. The lights flickered, casting a macabre glow that shifted with every heartbeat. The audience, now a mass of spectral figures, sat in rapt attention, their faces obscured by darkness but their eyes glowing with a visceral hunger. Every gaze felt like a spear piercing my skin. The weight of their yearning forced me to stand still, entranced by the horrors unfurling on the screen. The final showing began with a smoothness that belied the chaos swirling within the hall. It was a film of torment, a seemingly endless loop of sorrow where yet another victim shared a tragic fate, echoing sobs reverberating from the screen to my core. I recognized the setting, the same dimly lit theater, the same rotting seats, the stench of decay, each shot adorned with the faces of pain, familiar yet alien. My fingers trembled, gripping my throat as the wails of the long abandoned echoed through the silence, a mad symphony pulling at the edges of my sanity. That I turned to flee towards the exit that had once flickered in the dimness, but an invisible barrier pressed against my chest, holding me in place. I was paralyzed, unable to move despite the sheer adrenaline coursing through my veins. A cacophony of moans surrounded me, now unbearably close, magnifying the dread that filled my lungs. "Join us," they wailed, their voices layering upon one another in haunting harmony. We're never free. In the corner of my eye, I saw the woman from before, her disheveled hair hanging like a shroud around her hollow face. Her bloodied dress dripped crimson onto the torn carpet, forming a pool that shimmered like a portal. The phantom pressed closer, her gaze locked on mine as she mouthed a warning, her words lost in the din yet echoing in my heart. "You cannot leave." As the film shifted scenes to display the very moment a tragic betrayal unfolded, a figure raised a weapon against another. In a rush of frantic rage I felt a shard of icy comprehension stab through my thoughts. It was the narrative that unfurled each layer of despair, the torment that wove through every soul that had haunted this space, their lives extinguished within these walls. The struggle was palpable as the figures within the scenes began to writhe, each desperate for the chance to break free, yet their movements blended seamlessly with the crowd's restless anticipation. The screen crackled with static, and the audience's whispers turned into clear shouts, clashing above one another in their desperation. "You must share our pain." Their anguished cries churned the air, mixing with the rancid smell of blood that seeped through the cracks of time. I felt another presence at my side, a spine-chilling breath brushing against my ear. "Scream," it urged, its touch both soft and suffocating, worming its way into my mind, a noxious blend of regret and promise. "You must embrace it." A cold hand gripped my wrist, forcing me to face the screen as it revealed scenes of eager spectators long dead, their faces plastered with grotesque delight as more horrors unfolded before them. It was a parade of grotesquerie, a ritual performed through the lens of a camera, feeding off the very life of the theater from danger to despair. And then came the crunch of bones. The wooden floor creaked ominously underfoot as something else shifted beneath it, a terrible presence rising from the depths. The audience's laughter melded with the film's narrative, forming a sinister strain that twisted through the air, wrapping around my throat like a serpent. Suddenly the walls trembled, pulsating like the rhythm of a dying heart, threatening to spill the contents of the past into the present. "Let me go!" I screamed, my voice drowning in the cacophony, desperation clawing at my chest. But my shout was met with raucous laughter, a sinister echo that sent shards of fear racing through my veins. With every second, the pressure mounted, and shadows began to swell around me, pulling me forward, deeper into the theater's embrace, and just as I thought I might be consumed entirely, the lights dimmed to an almost suffocating pitch. The projections warped, distorting the shadows, carving them into grotesque shapes with gaping mouths that screamed for release. The audience roared in ecstatic anticipation, their eyes wide with madness, as if feeding off the terror swirling around me. Then it happened. A blinding flash seared across the screen. A figure emerged from the dark, more tangible than any ghost born from the film, a presence wreathed in shadows, its face a mask of anguish and rage. It stepped forward, pointing directly at me. "You are one of us." The accusation echoed through the hall, splitting the air like a blade. My heart raced, and just as I thought I might be thrust into the center of this dance of despair, the ground beneath me split, a fissure opening wide, swallowing the cacophony whole. The screams dissolved into nothingness, and I teetered on the brink, caught between the howling emptiness below and the horror consuming me from all sides. With a final, desperate glance at the crowd, I realized they were reaching out, hands extending from the abyss, pulling me closer toward the darkness. "Join us," they begged, desperate yet joyful. As I fell, I understood what they meant. I was destined to be part of an eternal finale, a new story woven into the cursed fabric of the theater. I closed my eyes, and everything went dark again, but a dawning sensation stirred within me. I was not gone yet. I could feel the shadows weaving around, pulling me into the depths of despair. Then, in the suffocating silence, a whisper brushed against my ear, cold and intimate. "The encore awaits." The disorienting void swallowed me whole, a churning abyss that wrapped around my thoughts like a suffocating shroud. I lingered in a state between consciousness and oblivion, suspended in a liminal space that thrummed with a disquieting energy. Flickers of recollection surged through me, images of the theater flickering like dying embers in the dark, yet haunting my mind with their vividness that I dared to open my eyes, drawn by an unsettling sound, a distant rustling that sounded almost human, threading through the quiet like an insidious promise. I found myself on a floor slick with an unknown substance, warm and viscous against my skin. My heart pounded erratically now, the echoes of laughter from the audience still resonating faintly in the back of my mind. I braced myself, rasping breaths pulling air thick with a cloying sweetness like blood and rotten leaves, rising to my knees, dread coiling tightly in my stomach. I scanned my surroundings. The familiar velvet seating stood abandoned, their red hue now mere silhouettes obscured in shadow. The flickering lights above revealed fleeting glimpses of shapes pressing against the walls. The audience, once a grotesque spectacle, now reduced to mere outlines, frozen in a tableau of terror. "Help us," I heard a voice croon, a siren's whisper steeped in longing and despair. It drifted from behind the screen, where the glow pulsated more fervently, sending shadows dancing like malevolent spirits. The invitation unnerved me, stirring something primal within, an instinct to either reach out or flee. Compelled by a force beyond my understanding, I crept towards the screen, feeling the sticky grip of the floor pulling at my feet with every hesitant step. As I reached the edge of the stage, suddenly a rush of images flooded my mind. The theater's history played in frenzied disarray, a succession of victims trapped by their own memories and failures, enshrined in a realm where pain was both an art form and a currency. I could see them, faces twisted in agony, specters clawing toward the light of the screen, forever begging for salvation. It was a cycle, a malignant loop that bound them to the mere projection of their torment. "Find us," they whispered through cracked lips. "You're the key." Key? My voice broke the silence, and as I spoke, the whispers swelled, becoming a chanting, a desperate unison of spirit and flesh, threading through the air like a sickening lullaby. I stumbled back, horrified, the realization blooming within me. I was meant to replace them, to fill the empty seat of their forever anguish. Suddenly, the screen flickered, and an image of myself appeared, distorted and shadowed, mouth agape in a silent scream. My blood ran cold as I recognized the face of despair that stared back, a cracked reflection of my own. No. I grasped at my collarbones, feeling phantom fingers grapple for purchase around my throat. The light grew blinding, and the bond tethering my soul to the fading figments of the tortured fractured. Then, like a dam bursting under the weight of sorrow, the rich silence ruptured. The shadows surged forward, coiling around my legs like denizens of the grave, grasping and pulling. "Join us," they wailed, a cacophony rising to a fever pitch as the walls of the theater began to close in, and I found myself at the cusp of surrender. That I felt myself dragged toward the screen, the boundary between life and despair thinning to a razor's edge, an insidious force beckoning me to take the plunge into the realm where the anguished resided. "You will never escape," a voice murmured, soft and coaxing, but cut through by the shriek of fury erupting from below. In that moment, the ground shuddered violently, rupturing a crack that spiraled beneath me. As if responding to a primal summoning, spirits clawed from the depths of the void, their trapped souls wailing in protest. I tumbled backward, breathless as the torrents of sound crashed over me like a wave, voices lamenting their fates, echoes of betrayal punctuating the darkness. The thrum of the theater echoed with an insatiable hunger, pulling forth dreams and nightmares that had once been confined to ancient reels. I felt hands cold, tangible snake around my wrists, pulling me forward, my fate sealed by unseen stitches of destiny, and then all at once, there was stillness. The atmosphere thickened, suffocating and heavy as the theater seemed to inhale deeply, and the weight of forgotten sorrows settled over me like a grave blanket. My heart raced, caught between the urge to succumb to this pulsating darkness or fight against it. I could almost discern a figure rising from the shadows, a tortured visage within the chaos. The resemblance struck might was the woman from my glimpse around the hall. Her eyes shimmered with desperation, pleading for me to break free from this ghastly embrace. "It is not over," she cried, her voice a razor's edge slicing through the air. But just as I was about to grasp her arm, the light shifted once more, revealing a new tableau, the image of the haunted cinema morphing into a grotesque family, eyes aflame, living shadows entwined in an eternal embrace of horror. The shadows quivered with intent, the audience standing deep within the folds of blackness whispering their undying wish. "Now you are part of us. Embrace your final role." In an instant, the fissures in the ground opened wider, sucking the last remnants of hope straight into oblivion. Despair surged around me, an unyielding tide. I clawed at the walls of the theater, but they pulsed with malevolence, drawing me closer to my fate, squelching my cries for release. And just as I thought the abyss would swallow me whole, a chilling whisper swept through the air. the final showing is about to begin. As I teetered on the precipice, the screen burst into life yet again. A harrowing tale that promised nothing but despair was about to unfold anew. The screen flickered and sputtered, drawing my gaze like a moth to a flame. Each heartbeat pulsed alongside the flickering imagery, and the world around me dissolved into hues of sepulchral gray. The figures trapped in the light began to wriggle unnaturally, mouths stretched into horrid agonies, yet no sound escaped their lips. This was not a film but a living nightmare, a ceremony of suffering unfolding before my very eyes. What is this? I gasped, agony clawing at the edges of my consciousness, each image splattering my mind with shards of anguish. The audience, once figures trapped in shadow, now loomed closer, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, features twisted into expressions of malignant glee, hungering for my despair. Welcome, a voice rasped, echoing from within the screen, smothered in laughter that strayed too close to madness. It sounded like the woman I saw earlier, her voice a haunting melody tinged with suffering. Tonight, we reveal the truth of your origins. I stumbled back against the wall, my breath hitching as the darkness rolled away to deliver a family drama, intricately woven with threads of deceit and sorrow. The actors on screen moved as if they were being operated by unseen strings, their actions choreographed in a dance of despair. Parents berated their children, shadows of regret and sorrow fogged their faces. The bleak heartbreak of reality surged through me. It was like watching history unravel yet belong to someone else, a grotesque reflection of humanity's darkest corners. That I felt a tug at my heartstrings, a strong compulsion to step forward yet strangled by the dread pulling at the edges of my being. The figures in the audience remained immobile, eyes locked onto the screen, feeding off the emotional turmoil that overflowed. I could almost feel the fraying threads of my own sanity begin to unravel, weaving carefully into the fabric of their theater world. Yours is the heart that beats within us, the pulse that drives our desires. The voice sang, growing richer, filled with feverishly obscene anticipation. You will complete us.no no. I shouted, recoiling from the mortifying revelation that buried me under the weight of its dread implications. My gaze darted toward the entrance, half expecting a rescue. Instead, solid shadows coalesced, their arms reaching toward me, whispering slurs of elation as dread wrapped tighter around my throat. Suddenly, the heavy atmosphere split open with a high-pitched shriek. A vortex of raw horror swallowed the illusionary family, melting them into the lens of the theater. Screams of bygone tragedies surged forth, leaving behind plastered silhouettes grasping desperately for the remnants of their humanity. A chill lanced through my body, and the weight of realization descended upon my chest. I could sense it now, an insatiable hunger clinging to my own flesh, an invitation to join in the unending performance. My skin crawled, my heart thudding like a war drum as a muffled chant echoed through the room. Join us, become one. No. I pressed my palms against my ears, as if doing so could drown out the beseeching cries of anguish that crescendoed around me. Each syllable gnawed at my resolve, leaving trails of doubt in their wake. But there was something else. Beneath the chorus of despair, I could perceive another voice, threadbare and distant, resonating just beyond me. Run, it cooed, pulling at my heart and igniting the flickering flame of rebellion within. It was the woman, her face glimmering from inside the screen, desperately weaving through the haze of despair, her eyes alive with urgency. You must find the way. Do not let them consume you. I turned, caught between two worlds, the ghosts that called to me with promises of acceptance, and the fierce light of sanity offered from beyond the screen. The ground had begun to tremble again, fissures splintering outward as if some ancient beast stirred beneath its bedrock. The air crackled with tension, and the audience figures began to snap from their trance, sinister grins stretching across their veiled features. Some began to move toward me, a wave of predatory intent igniting in their eyes. Find us. End the cycle. They screamed in unison, voices weaving threads of desperation that merged with the ultimate despair. You belong to us. A wave of terror unspooled within as the screen glowed viciously, distorting the image of the woman into something grotesque, the edges of her form fraying and writhing with vicious intent. Trust me. You can break free. She bellowed, and as if on cue, the theater unleashed a deafening roar, vibrating through my bones, a relentless force seeking to shatter my will. That I hesitated, paralyzed between the luring light of the screen and the encroaching darkness wrapping tightly around me. Suddenly, another piercing scream cut through, but this time it was not of anguish, It was Minne, a shrill note of confusion as I felt my body move against my will, pulled closer to the cursed screen, the sight warped before me, and in the grating noise of shifting shadows, an image emerged. My own unwound face staring back, eyes wide with terror, yet whether a reflection or a twisted echo, I could not decipher. As the last remnants of the theater's sanity unraveled, the final words echoed ominously. "You will not escape this night unharmed." With that, the darkness lunged forward, twisting reality itself, and I felt the floor give way beneath me, plunging into an abyss swirling with fear. My world spun out of control as I tumbled into the depths, the screams of the past rising once again, louder, colder, inevitable. What would it take to break the cycle? Or was this the last showing of my life? The final thought froze in my mind as I was consumed by the swirling blackness, and in that instant, the theater brightened again, casting light on the depths of darkness, revealing what awaited me below. There I was, suspended in oblivion, engulfed by the clutches of a reality that twisted like smoke. My surroundings shifted erratically. For a heartbeat I would see the faces of the damned, their mouths agape in silent howls. Then I glimpsed just the flicker of fluorescent bulbs above, buzzing incessantly as they fought against the encroaching shadows. The sensation was dizzying, a relentless loop of despair played out in reverse, a cycle where I was perpetually the pawn. With a horrified gasp, I plunged deeper into the darkness until I found my footing on something solid yet unsettling beneath me, a stage, cracked and worn, echoing with the weight of misery that reverberated through time. The stale scent of old dust, mixed with a travesty of sweetness, clung bitterly to my lungs. I could see faint outlines of what appeared to be characters, suspended in poses of misfortune, forever trapped within the veil of the theater's backstory. "Welcome to our performance, dear audience member," a distorted voice railed from the shadows of the wings, its tone mocking yet saturated with echoes of sorrow. "You are but a fleeting visitor, but your essence shall enrich our narrative." The chill of dread seeped into my bones, and I scanned the horizon of forlorn faces, much like the shadows I had seen before. Their eyes remained fixed on me, mirroring the chilling ardor of predation combined with longing, waiting for a cue that never came. I in the corner of my vision, a name tag dangled from a long-forgotten curtain, fluttering like a dying moth. It read the enthralled. I swallowed hard, fear twisting my insides. Could I escape the fate that seemed to be drawing its noose tighter? "Courage, dear one," whispered a voice, soft yet insistent. It was her, that haunting woman again. A flicker of her form emerged beside me, ethereal yet palpably tethered to the darkness around us. Her eyes, shimmering with fervent urgency, implored me to act. "They're just actors in this macabre play. The real trap lies in the ties they bind you with. Break free before the ceremony begins." Before I could respond, a fog cloaked the edges of my vision, coalescing into monstrous shapes that slithered out from the shadows, pulling at my sleeves, whispering sweetly deceptive promises. "Join us. Become one with the rapture." The disembodied voices merged into a cacophony of seductive despair, resonating with something deep within me, begging to surface. "I want." I screamed, fighting back against the oppressive dread clawing at my throat. In that moment, I felt the surge of her presence wrapping around me, tightening as the chanting intensified. The audience began to sway, each figure stepping closer, their movements synchronized like a twisted dance, embodying the rawness of hunger and sorrow, eager to feast on my despair. A sudden realization struck: these were not just voices or forms, they were echoes of past souls, remnants of those lured into the abyss. Perhaps they suffered as I did, trapped in this cursed theatrical chamber forevermore. And even though I fought, each step back became a step toward yielding, drawn into a performance not of my own making. "You must stand your ground. They detect your doubt," she urged, her voice a desperate whisper against the impending tide of agony that threatened to rush over me. My heart hammered wildly in my chest, and as I shut my eyes against the haunting specters, I focused on the flicker of resolve she ignited within me. With renewed grit, I tore myself from the sinister chains of their allure and raced toward the stage's edge, searching for a hidden exit, but the shadows shifted violently with me, closing in like a consuming fog. "Hold on to your breath," she cried, a flicker of spirit bathing her as she pointed toward an insignia glowing faintly amidst the shrouded darkness. "Find the rose." The key to breaking their bond. The shadows shrieked with outrage, revealing their grotesque features, flesh twisted and faces hollowed, a manifestation of despair molded by despair itself. The stage crackled with ominous energy, luminous discord cloaked in hostile whispers tightening around my form. I felt the weight of my past, the heart-wrenching despair of those who had come before me, pulled taut and eager to entwine me into their tragic narrative. Yet, fueled by the woman's urgency, the fierce beacon amidst encroaching darkness, I lunged forward, propelled not just by fear but fierce hope. With each step closer to the flickering glow of the rose, the howls of anguish rose in a terrifying crescendo, punctuated by the wrath of the shadows swirling violently. But would I succeed in plucking it before I was consumed in the threads of their tale, woven forever into a story not my own? And just then, as I reached for the pulsing light, an ear-splitting silence fell, a moment laden with anticipation. The shadows recoiled, their eyes widening with horror as I neared the rose. But I had yet to grasp its thorny stem when the ground beneath my feet began to tremble, the fabric of reality itself quaking ominously. "There's no escaping tonight," the voice thundered, distorting like a vile incantation. "You are to be the next act." The impending darkness surged toward me, and just as I felt the warmth of the rose brush against my fingertips, it disappeared into nothingness, and I was met with the screams of anguished souls, echoing in the hollow chambers of my mind, leaving me to question, had I finally sealed my fate, or had I just unleashed something far more sinister? In that pulse of hesitation and despair, the shadows descended, and I might have lost my grip on reality forever. In the suffocating darkness, my mind reeled as I felt the shadows envelop me like hands culling through flesh, searching for anything to grasp onto. I stumbled back, breath hitching in my throat, when a disorienting rush of memories surged forward, images of each soul trapped within these walls flooding my senses. Faces twisted in agony, laughter that turned to shrieks, and the oppressive weight of despair draped over the theater like a shroud. Desperately, I scanned the chaos for some hint, a whispered suggestion of where to go next. The audience, their forms indistinct, began to shift, the air around them heavy with unrepentant hunger. I could feel their collective yearning, a drive to feed upon any semblance of hope. The frantic vocals of the woman I had seen earlier pierced through the turmoil, stark and jolting. "Don't look at them. They want you to lose yourself," her words slammed into my psyche, tearing me away from their gaze. With newfound resolve, I focused on the dimness ahead, seeking remnants of what I once believed to be an exit. Instead, I stumbled upon a hidden alcove wedged against the warped theater wall, behind a curtain that writhed with haunted whispers. Pushing through the heavy fabric, I felt an immediate chill envelop me, slipping deeper into shadows as I stepped into a narrow corridor. The walls pulsed with a cold energy, each heartbeat echoing in the damp wood that surrounded me. Dim lights flickered on and off, reminiscent of dying stars struggling against a vast nothingness. As I crept forward, I couldn't shake the sensation that eyes were trailing me, watching from the pitch-black void. "Stay close," the soft voice of the apparition whispered beside me, now just a flicker in the corner of my vision. "They dwell in the walls. You must be careful not to give in to their despair." But as her earnest warnings faded into the distance, I realized I was alone, lost in a maze of darkness that a sound echoed, the haunting melody of a child's laughter weaving through the oppressive air. Naturally, I was drawn to it, lured by its innocent charm, but that enchantment quickly soured as the corridor widened into a vast chamber. Scanning the eerie expanse, my breath hitched upon witnessing shot mirrors lining the walls, reflecting the fractured pieces of my own face and the warped essence of each specter flickering behind me. The child's laughter subsided, replaced by a chilling giggle that bounced around the room, stale breath tracing phantom fingers along my spine. I turned, ready to confront the source, only to be met with a grotesque figure emerging from the shattered glass. Its form was a composite of every horror I had ever encountered, limbs askew, features blending into each other, a parody of childhood wrapped in misery. "Play with me," it crooned, a voice deceptively sweet layering its words with honeyed terror. "We can play forever, get away from me." I shouted, recoiling in sheer panic. My heart pounded in my chest, the echoes of my own voice drowned out by the growing chorus of anguished wails that seemed to rise from the very floorboards. But that laughter, now turned sinister, twisted into a melodious chant that compelled my senses. "Join us, you'll never leave." I turned to bolt the other way, the alcove fading into an impenetrable black. The figure surged forward, hands outstretched, taking form from the darkness, a face morphing and changing with every blink, becoming familiar children who had once laughed in the sunlight, now wrapped in sorrow and equipped with chilling smiles. Panic clawed at me from the inside out, but suddenly, a strand of light broke through the gloom, a doorway framed in whispers of reassurance where the shadows skittered away, recoiling from its brilliance. Not understanding why, I ran towards it, fueled by instinct, my breath hitching with every shaky step, but just as I reached the light, the shadows solidified around the doorway, barring my escape. The grotesque figure, mere inches from me, grinned, its hollow eyes echoing the depths of despair trapped within. You can't run from the play. You have a part and it's ready to be revealed just then. The very ground beneath me tore asunder, a gaping maw of darkness opening wide, threatening to consume everything as a tide of screams echoes of what felt like eternity surged forth. The world tilted on its axis, flipping upside down as reality fragmented, and I plunged forward into the abyss. In this falling chaos, the shadows' laughter echoed around me, a reminder that I was never truly alone, even as the last vestiges of the light flickered out, leaving me enmeshed in an unfathomable terror. And in that dizzying descent, a name clawed at my mind, someone I was certain I should remember, a name I yearned to call, but the more I wrestled with it, the further it slipped away, buried within the cacophony of maddened voices that wrapped tightly around me, pulling me under. I sensed a flicker of clarity in the rising chaos, an impending revelation, but buried beneath layers of anguish. Would I be able to grasp it before it was snatched away like everything else? The blackness thickened, and as the screams amplified, I felt hands reaching from the void, grasping for me. Time blurred, everything merged into one horrific experience. Would I be consumed completely or emerge with answers scarred yet unbroken? A chilling draft whispered around me as the abyss seemed to grip tighter, each pulse drawing me deeper into the void. My limbs flailed aimlessly, colliding with unseen walls, and I fought to maintain my grip on sanity as the cacophony of despair swirled around me. The grasping hands felt cold as they brushed against my skin, remnants of lost souls longing for connection, for release, or perhaps revenge. Suddenly, I broke free from the maw of darkness, thudding hard onto a rotting wooden floor. Breathless, I clambered to my feet, heart racing in sync with the echoing frenzy of whispers that caressed my Ursa chorus of names, emotions, and pleading voices swirling, begging me to listen. Come back, they intoned, their words weaving into one another like a sinister web. I staggered to the nearest wall, the aged surface slick under my fingertips, clammy and alive with pulsing energy, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Shadows licked at the edges of my vision, writhing like serpents poised to strike, emitting a sense of possessiveness, a need to disintegrate any remnants of defiance. With a newfound determination igniting within, I followed the voices, letting fear guide me through the shadows of the unknown. The corridor stretched indefinitely before me, illuminated sporadically by flickers of dim light that revealed grotesque murals smeared across the walls, visions of despair and haunting memories, each stroke of paint a reminder that I was not the first to traverse this haunted ground. As I moved forward, a chilling stillness filled the air, suffocating. I halted mid-step, swallowing hard. The whispers had come to an abrupt stop, replaced by an unsettling quiet that echoed in my ears. My pulse quickened as a soft scuffling broke the silence, drawing my gaze towards a doorway at the end of the hall, a mere sliver of light illuminating the threshold. Cautiously inching toward the faint glow, the quiet morphed into stifling tension, a singular sound creeping towards me through the darkened air, the unmistakable sound of a child sobbing. It was raw, desperate, as if the very weight of despair tied to that sound rendered the world around it heavy and suffocating. Who's there? I called out, voice trembling. The sobbing persisted, a tale entwined with grief. A palpable sadness filled the void between use, an unbearable longing echoing through my core. There was no answer, only the soft lilt of sorrow beckoning me forward, encouraging my steps. Pushing through the doorway, I was thrust into a cavernous room, the source of the sorrow revealed in a grotesque tableau. A child, barely clinging to the edges of reality, sat atop an upturned wooden box, body trembling as waves of grief cascaded off of her. She was ethereal, her translucent form flickering like a beacon amidst the overwhelming dark. Waves of energy radiated from her, mingling with the desperate cries of the theater around me. Help me, she wailed, voice thick with unshed tears that glimmered without end. They won't let me leave. A flicker of recognition washed over me, the charm of innocence shattering against the backdrop of her desolation. Who was this child? Why did she seem so achingly familiar? As I inched closer, the air thickened with dread, heavy as though the walls themselves would inhale at any moment. Please. You have to help me, she cried, her wide eyes glistening with an otherworldly glow. You don't belong here. They'll take you too. Time is short. Who are you? What do you need me to do? I pressed, fear and urgency entwining within my chest. Just as she opened her mouth to answer, the shadows coalesced, shifting and swirling violently, whipping past me in a surge that sent murky darkness deep into my bones. The box beneath the child shattered, and the darkness recoiled as spectral figures erupted, their mouths stretched in silent screams directed at me. Run. The child screeched, suddenly backlit by an ethereal glow, the shadows grasping for her as they twisted grotesquely around her small form. You have to find the truth before it finds you. The figures lunged towards her. Gnarled hands reaching out, but before I could react, I was scorched with a memory skittering through my consciousness, a name thrust forward through layers of muffled chaos: Matilda. Panic curled in my stomach as I realized a connection formed not only to the child before me but perhaps to the theater itself. The whispers raised in pitch, enveloping me in their manic frenzy as Matilda's luminescent form began to flicker, her essence fading. In desperation, I rushed towards her, but as I reached out, the shadows congealed, pulling away, ripping into the fabric of my reality and thrusting me backward into darkness. The moment felt perpetual, an eternity encompassing the fleeting grasp of connection. As the echoes of her cries began to dissolve into the futility of the dark, a voice emerged, low and haunting, reverberating through the cavernous shadows. You should not have come. You will never leave. With one final crash of whispers, the darkness closed in, and I fell once more into a chasm of dread, where only one realization settled. Every moment drew me closer to a truth that twisted into a chilling destiny I could no longer escape. The fall was electrifying and unrelenting, as if time itself twisted in a spiraling descent. I grasped at shadows, reaching blindly for something to hold on to, anything to break the plummet. The suffocating darkness enveloped me, and the cacophony of whispers returned, louder and more chaotic than before, their urgency crackling against my eardrums like static. Suddenly, I landed hard onto a cold, smooth surface, a stark contrast to the rotting floor I had previously felt. Groaning, I pushed myself up, finding myself in a cramped room, scarcely lit by a flickering bulb that dangled from a ceiling stained with dampness and age. The scent of mildew mingled with something far more rancid, swirling around me ominously, penetrating my senses. Matilda, I whispered, my mind racing as I focused on the name. The shadows trembled at the sound, quaking as if resonating with my desperation. Then, from the scraping sound of something moving in the shadows, a figure began to emerge. It elongated slowly, a silhouette stretching upward against the dim light, and dread suffocated the air thick around me. My heart pounded as I caught sight of her, a tall woman, her frame gaunt, features obscured, yet her eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity like twin flames of despair. You shouldn't have followed her, you shouldn't have come back, she hissed, her voice low, dripping with contempt and sorrow. Who are you? I gasped, stumbling back against the wall, desperation clawing at my throat. The whispers turned to a rash of indiscernible shouting, colliding in a storm as the shadow woman stepped closer. I am one of the many trapped here, she said with a cruel smile. A puppet strung by fate, carved into memory and pain. We all wore masks once, but now, we are truth. The darkness desires another soul, one as lost as the rest. My thoughts raced, it was all connected. Matilda. What happened to her? How do I save her? I felt the weight of icy fingers gripping my heart, terrified that whatever these beings were could slip through my grasp. The woman laughed, a chilling sound that stung my ears. She is the last flicker of hope in this venue of despair. But hope is a fleeting thing. You cannot save her, but you could join her, a moment of clarity before you descend into the madness as we have. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the walls reverberated with shrieks, the grip of reality warping. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the overwhelming din, panic surging through me like venom. The shadows began elongating unnaturally, creeping along the walls, as skeletal hands emerged to grasp at my limbs. I flailed, desperately searching for an exit, each movement weighed down by an unseen force anchoring me there. You fool! You will never leave! The woman screeched, her voice rising above the chaos, filled with a chorus of tortured souls. Just as I wrestled with the shadows trying to swallow me whole, memory clawed its way to the surface. Matilda's soft cries filling my mind, her plea resonating with despair. I knew I needed to fight against the darkness. With a rush of adrenaline, I surged forward, pushing past the malevolent figure, barely avoiding her grasp. As I stumbled into the corridor beyond the room, the whispers roared back to life, like a tide crashing over brittle shores, each syllable sharpening the dread that coiled in my core. I was chased by echoes of woes, lost dreams that settled down around me in choking layers. They were alive and seeking their next victim, each step I took ringing out in protest against the hunger of what lurked behind. Keep going. An amalgamated voice urged, bursting forth from the shadows within. I could sense that they had been the remnants of those who had come before me, slipping through the rifts of reality, now mere phantoms of their former selves. Find the truth. They wailed together, their voices a harmonious melody of desperation and madness as I ran. Every glance behind revealed amorphous shapes reaching out, feral and wild, but the echoes undulated, urging me to push through the continuous dread clamping onto my throat like a vice. The corridor twisted and turned, leading to an iron door at the end, framed in decaying wood, the only barrier between the shadows and my desperate attempt at escape. I threw my weight against it, heart racing as I felt the echoes of sorrow closing in tighter. With a crack that resonated like thunder, the door swung open, and I stumbled into an adjacent room, gasping. This place was different. It was a small projection room, abandoned but intact. Dust motes wavered in the faint light of an old projector still flickering in the far corner of the room, casting fleeting images on damp, moldy walls. And then I saw a faded title card illuminated, unraveling the horrors of Matilda's story before me. Each frame morphing into horrific images, scenes that twisted and contorted, of laughter turned to screams, joy corroded into despair. Caught in their cycle, the memories surrounded me, pulling further into the depths. As the final frame flashed a spectral image of Matilda, eyes wide and pleading, I was pulled backward, as something grabbed me fiercely from the shadows. Your time is running out. The shadows hissed, their hands clenching tighter. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash, sealing my fate. A horror-stricken gasp echoed through the air, reverberating through the projection room as the shadows from the walls began to coil tighter, pulling me towards what awaited beyond. In that moment, the room filled with whispers clamoring around me, drowning out my thoughts and every shred of my humanity, dragging me down into a dark abyss I thought I had escaped. The last thing I could hear before everything blended into the suffocating void was Matilda's voice, the last echo of her helpless plea ringing clear. You should not have come, you will not escape. And then, silence. In the suffocating void of silence, I felt a ripple of despair. Memories flooded my mind, echoing from the depths of the darkness. It was more than a theater, it was an altar to suffering. The wallpaper peeled and twisted in grotesque patterns, exhaling the residue of anguished lives long extinguished, each moment a shout, a scream begging for release. I stood amidst a collage of despair and began to piece together the remnants of my fractured understanding. Matilda was not just a child trapped in this nightmarish play, she was the heart of it, binding thread that connected everyone who had ever sat in the audience. Each victim's story was a fragment of her own, woven into an endless tapestry of pain. As the echoes of her cries reverberated, clarity began to emerge from the shadows draping my mind. You have a part, a voice whispered, icy and intimate, bringing the chilling realization that the shadows were not only barriers, they were manifestations of choices, regrets from countless lost souls woven into a profound curse. I could feel their weight pressing against me, 1,000 hands reaching from the past, grasping for salvation. You must remember. They shrieked, a mosaic of voices crashing through the silence. I dared to close my eyes, willing my heart to connect with Matilda's essence. In that moment, I saw flashes, scenes of joy twisted with despair, all leading to a single dreadful act, a betrayal. A mother, eyes filled with resentment, striking down her own child out of fear and jealousy. Matilda's anguished screams, infused with the souls of the lost, reverberating through the very foundation of the theater. Light flickered through the ether of despair, revealing cracks in the darkness. The deeper you delved into the stories, the more the image of Matilda became clear, her endless wails, the echoes of every anguished heart yearning for release. I wasn't just a spectator, I was a part of this curse, entwined into the narrative like everyone else. You cannot leave without facing the truth, a whisper caressed my ear. The shadows pressed in tighter, forming a reluctant circle, forcing me to confront my own despair. And then I remembered. The reason I had come, the catalyst that drew me into this darkness. It happened magnificently, Just like a film unfurling before me, an incident I buried deep within my heart, a loss. A dark smothering envy, burning brighter than any flamy sister. The bitter realization cracked open like an egg, splattering darkness over every bond one thought I shared. I had left her behind, isolated in silence while I sought the thrill of escape. Through a twisted sense of unyielding fate, Matilda had become a reflection, a vessel of every feeling buried in my bones. As despair surged, the shadows twisted and writhed around me, their hunger insatiable. They wanted to feast on the sorrow I held, only then would they relinquish their grip. My vision blurred. Was I ready to sacrifice myself like she had, surrendering to the darkness that clung so fervently? "You are the key," Matilda breathed, her fading spirit flickering at the edges of my vision. I felt her warm the brief flicker of hope. Heart racing, I reached deep inside. It surged forward, igniting a flickering flame of defiance. I remember. I screamed into the encroaching void, eyes wide in a surge of spirit and resolve. A choice rose within, a fracture, splitting the shadows. The presence of ghosts surged, consumed by their own longing, and I embraced their pain, reaching for release beyond my own. It let out a howl, ripping through the constraints of time and existence, exposing the heart of this plight. In this moment of clarity, I invited them to intertwine, to coalesce, to break free together, transmuting regret into understanding and letting go of the agony of their lost lives. The shadows recoiled, dissolving like mist under sunlight, their hunger replaced by whispering gratitude. Their desperate screams turned to soft, ethereal sighs, folded into the fabric of the world. Each story cried out for acknowledgement, for understanding, and in relaying their pain, I felt Matilda surge, grounding herself with me in that moment. The warmth swept through the empty theater, colliding and cascading as light like I hadn't felt in ages swept through its decrepit halls. I blinked against the brightness, instinctively drawn towards the exit. Now visible and radiant, it was shimmering, unfolding before me like petals of an ethereal flower. But as I stepped forward, whispers suddenly echoed back in the remnants of the void, a chilling voice that sent shivers through my spine. "You may have freed them, but you cannot escape. The final act begins now." I felt icy fingers at my back, pulling, yearning to keep me tethered to this cursed home, pulled back into the darkness, but I hesitated. I had borne witness to their anguish, had shared in their collective suffering, and realized, would not be punished for my fate. I proclaimed it aloud, feeling the words drench me in warmth. "Am not bound to you. I release you." The theater shook with a cacophony of echoes. The light shone brighter, Matilda's voice wove amongst the fading darkness. "You hold the key to a choice. Leave or stay. Choose wisely." Fury and despair extinguished, I stepped toward the light that coaxed me gently forth, feeling the shadows retreat, gasping for connection. But there was a truth even deeper than the screams. The haunting stillness that followed faded to silence as Matilda's final whisper morphed into clarity. "You are their keeper, take my place." The final horror twisted through me like a knife. As the portal of light enveloped me, I realized the theater had always relied upon the dread hidden within, but if I stepped away now, the horrors would remain, feeding on the next unwitting soul who braved its halls. I could never turn away. I would be the keeper of their stories. With a surge of strength, I leapt toward the light, resolving to become the guardian of the tales untold, the harbinger, a sacrifice to save the countless souls within the shadows, tethering their stories to mine. And as the theater erupted with light, the remaining whispers merged into a soft, eerie applause. "Welcome home." As the final curtain fell, I looked back into the heart of the shadows and whispered, "The show must go on forever." Deeper held the foreboding truth that laced my spiraled fate, a fragment of the essence weaving into the never-ending tapestry, and there I remained, an anguished guardian, forever listening to their cries. The darkness was never truly vanquished. As the lights flashed one final time, my reflection twisted in the screen beside me, revealing the chilling, distorted visage of my own, one that would eternally wear the mask of lost hope, forever hunting the next soul brave enough to stumble through those cursed doors.